The mall was the last place I expected anything life-changing to happen. It was just noise and motion. Parents chasing kids, teenagers making laps around the food court, the distant chatter of cashiers. It smelled like perfume samples, pretzels, and burned espresso. And on that Saturday afternoon, I was just another guy trying to cross something off a to-do list. The ring box in my pocket was small, barely noticeable. I kept touching it without realizing, my fingers brushing against the velvet like I was making sure it was still there. It wasn't a big gesture or anything. Just a replacement for the band Emma had accidentally lost at the gym. That's how she said it. Like the ring had slipped off her finger, disappeared into a locker room drain, and she was already over it before I could even react. I'd been more upset than I let on. Not because of the ring itself. It was a plain silver band, nothing flashy. But because she hadn't seemed to care. No panic. No, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Just, I guess it's gone. Do you think we should get another one? Like it was a sock or a misplaced receipt. Still, I told myself not to make a big deal. People lose things. Life moves on. But I think part of me knew, somewhere buried under months of brushed-off instincts, that I was walking around with more than a ring in my pocket. I was carrying a question I didn't want answered. And then I saw her. Second floor. Corner of the indoor balcony that overlooked the food court. She was sitting at one of those coffee spots with faux wood tables and industrial light fixtures, trying hard to look artisanal but still tucked into a shopping center between a shoe store and a Build-A-Bear. At first, it didn't register that it was her. Just a woman with a familiar posture, leaning in across the table. I looked again. It was Emma, my wife, dressed casual but neat. Light sweater, hair pulled back like she hadn't spent time on it, though I knew she had. And she wasn't alone. The guy across from her was maybe mid-30s, clean-shaven, a little too polished for a Saturday. Button-down shirt, dark jeans, no shopping bags. His arm rested across the back of the booth like he belonged there. His fingers brushed her shoulder, slowly, confidently. Not an accidental graze. Not just co-workers. And she was laughing. Not that awkward haha you're funny laugh she used in office Zoom calls, but the real one, the one I used to get. It curled her mouth to the left first, then wrinkled her nose. The kind that made her play with whatever was in her hand. In this case, a spoon she twirled between her fingers like she had no idea she was doing it. I stopped walking. I didn't even realize I had. I stood still while people brushed past me, annoyed that I was blocking the escalator entrance. I watched her lean in closer to him, her elbow now on the table, her chin almost resting on her hand. I didn't know what to do. My body was in fight-or-freeze mode, and apparently I'd picked freeze. Eventually, I moved, feet dragging like I was underwater, and stepped off the escalator toward them. I didn't walk fast. I didn't storm up. I didn't even know what I was planning to say. Her laugh faded, and her whole posture changed in one sharp second. She straightened her back, pulled her hand away. Her eyes shifted, and when she saw me, she blinked, slow, almost like her brain needed a second to recalibrate what reality she was in. She looked like a student getting caught texting during a lecture, only worse, more complicated. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice steady. The guy turned toward me, eyebrows lifting slightly. He looked me up and down like I was some stranger asking for the time. Emma gave a smile, small, tight. "Not the good kind." "Nate," she said, reaching for her drink like she needed something to do with her hands. "This is Colin. He's on my team at work." Colin nodded politely. "Hey, man." I nodded back, more of a reflex than anything. I glanced at Emma. "Didn't know you were working today." She paused. "We're kind of finalizing a pitch. Just grabbed some coffee to go over the deck." I looked at the table. No laptop, no documents. Just 2 drinks, one of them half-finished, and a napkin with a doodle of a cat wearing glasses. Emma had drawn it. She always doodled when she was nervous or bored. "Didn't realize you two were this close," I said, keeping my tone even. Emma's expression shifted. Her eyes narrowed a fraction, just enough to register that she'd caught the subtext. Her voice dropped to that defensive softness she used when she wanted to seem reasonable and hurt at the same time. Nate, you're reading too much into it. I didn't respond. You know how intense the office has been lately, she continued. I've told you how short-staffed we are. This isn't weird, it's work. She was already writing the script in her head. I could see it happening, framing the scene as innocent, casting herself as the misunderstood partner, laying the groundwork for how I'd be the one making a scene if I pushed. But I wasn't pushing. Not yet. I looked at Colin. He still hadn't moved his hand completely. It hovered behind her like he wasn't sure whether to leave it there or pull it back. Like they'd been sitting like that for a while and forgot to adjust. You two here often? I asked, my eyes still on him. Emma scoffed lightly, trying to laugh it off. What is this? An interrogation? You're married, I said simply. Her face twitched barely, but it was there. Colin finally pulled his hand away and muttered something about checking his email. He pulled out his phone and stared at it like it held the secrets of the universe. I looked at Emma again. I was picking something up for you, I said. My fingers tapped the pocket with the ring box. You know, since yours disappeared. She blinked again, slower this time. Oh, that's sweet of you. I nodded. Yeah, thought you'd want it back. Or at least something like it. She looked uncomfortable now, like the walls were getting closer. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe this was just work, just a weird moment taken out of context. But the truth was, I'd been stacking doubts in the back of my mind for weeks, maybe longer. This wasn't about one hand on a shoulder. It was about everything that came before it. And everything she didn't say when I caught her in the middle of a lie she hadn't prepared for. Nate, she said again, more firmly, this is nothing. But it didn't feel like nothing. And the part that really got me? She never asked what I was doing there. She never said, hey, what's up? Or, are you okay? She went straight into defense. That's when I knew. Not because she confessed. Not because I had proof. But because the woman I knew, the one I married, would have pulled her hand away from his the second she saw me. She didn't. The ride home felt longer than it should have. Traffic wasn't bad. But my head was. Every red light gave my thoughts time to pile up, each one louder than the last. Emma sat in the passenger seat scrolling through her phone, the screen angled away from me just enough to be intentional. She hadn't offered to drive together. She hadn't suggested we talk. She acted like the scene at the mall had already expired, like it was a minor inconvenience she expected me to forget. I kept my eyes on the road, replaying it all in my head. The way she laughed, the way his hand stayed where it was, the way she went straight to defense instead of surprise. I wasn't angry yet. That came later. Right then, I was stuck in that quiet, heavy space where your brain is still trying to bargain with reality. I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself work stress makes people weird. I told myself I'd spent too much time online reading stories that weren't mine. But every time I tried to downplay it, another memory cut in line and demanded attention. Like the late nights. For months now, Emma had been working late too, sometimes 3 nights a week. She said it casually, like it wasn't worth discussing. Meetings ran long. Deadlines stacked up. Someone always needed her. At first, I offered to pick her up. She said no, said it wasn't necessary, that she didn't want to inconvenience me. Then she stopped telling me when she'd be home at all. Her phone was always on airplane mode when she walked through the door. She claimed it was a habit from meetings. Focus time, she called it. But she never turned it back on right away. Sometimes not for hours. She used to text me during the day. Little things. Complaints. Random thoughts. That stopped too. I'd get one dry update around noon, then nothing until she was home. And even then, she was distant. Tired, distracted, already halfway somewhere else. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. There was the lipstick. I found it in her car a few weeks ago, tucked between the passenger seat and the console. It wasn't her brand, not her shade. When I asked, she laughed and said it must have belonged to a coworker she gave a ride to. I remembered thinking that was odd. Emma hated people leaving things in her car. She liked control. Clean lines. Order. Then there was the receipt. A bar downtown neither of us ever went to. Dated for a night, she claimed she stayed late at the office ordering takeout. She said maybe she paid for a colleague and forgot. She said I was being paranoid when I asked why she didn't remember. The blouse. She wore it once. Cream-colored, soft fabric, cut just low enough to feel intentional. She said she spilled coffee on her usual one and had to buy something quick. I never saw that blouse again. I asked about it weeks later and she shrugged, said maybe she donated it. And then there was the team building night. She told me about it after the fact. Said it was dumb, harmless. Games, drinks, networking. I didn't think much of it until her friend posted a story. Emma was blindfolded, standing between two men while people cheered. Someone spun her around. Someone told her to choose. She didn't hesitate. She reached out and grabbed the arm of a man I'd never seen before. Everyone laughed. I watched that clip 3 times. Emma never mentioned that part. When I asked, she rolled her eyes and said it was just a stupid icebreaker. Said I was insecure for even caring. I exhaled slowly, realizing my chest had been tight the entire drive. Emma shifted in her seat. "You've been really quiet," she said, not looking up. "I'm thinking," I replied. "About what?" I almost laughed. "Almost. About today," I said. She sighed. Loudly. "I told you, Nate. It wasn't anything." "That's what you said," I replied. "You didn't really explain it." "There's nothing to explain. That guy didn't look like nothing." Her head snapped toward me. "Are you seriously doing this right now?" I glanced at her, then back to the road. "Doing what?" "Making it into something it's not. You do this. You spiral." There it was. The flip. Suddenly, I wasn't reacting, I was the problem. The suspicious one. The insecure one. "I just asked a question," I said. "And I answered it," she snapped. "I'm allowed to have coworkers, Nate." "I know that." "Then act like it." Silence fell again, heavier this time. When we pulled into the driveway, she got out before I'd even turned the engine off. Slammed the door a little harder than necessary. I sat there for a moment longer, hands still on the wheel, staring at the front of the house. Something had shifted. I didn't know what yet, but I knew I couldn't unsee what I'd seen. And for the first time in a long time, I wondered how many signs I'd ignored just because believing her was easier than facing the truth. A few days passed. Emma acted normal, like that moment at the mall had been erased, edited out of the script. She laughed at things on her phone, told me about work, asked if we needed anything from the store. She even made my favorite pasta one night, which she hadn't done in months. It was all very choreographed, like she was trying to plug leaks in a ship that was already halfway underwater. I didn't bring it up again. I didn't ask about Colin, didn't mention the weirdness. I watched. I listened. And quietly, I started pulling at the thread. She'd gone to bed early Thursday night. Claimed she had a migraine. I waited until the shower started running, then went to my office and opened my laptop. We had a shared bank account. Always had. Emma handled most of the budgeting. I usually just checked to see when bills were due. This time, I looked closer. It started with small things. A few Uber rides in the middle of the day, all logged as business. But Emma didn't usually use rideshares. She drove herself to work every morning, came home in her car. I scrolled back 2 months. More midday rides, then restaurant charges. A wine bar across town. A hotel cafe. Nothing extravagant, just frequent, quiet. Then I saw them. 2 charges. Both from the same hotel chain. One mid-September. One just a week ago. Booked under her name. Both between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. short windows. No overnight stays. Nothing that would trip suspicion. The kind of thing a coworker might miss, but a partner wouldn't. My stomach tightened. I copied the address and opened a new tab. The hotel was 15 minutes from her office. Business-friendly. High ratings. Discreet. It wasn't the kind of place you go to nap between meetings. It was where you go when you don't want to be seen. I didn't sleep much that night. Emma lay next to me, curled under the blanket like nothing was wrong. I stared at the ceiling until morning. The next day, I called in sick and drove to the hotel. I walked in wearing a hoodie and a baseball cap. Told the front desk I was helping my wife plan a surprise event. Asked if she'd been there recently, said I might have gotten the dates mixed up. The woman at the counter smiled and typed her name. "Oh yes," she said. "I remember her. She came in last week. Very sweet." I asked if she'd been alone. A pause. She blinked. Then, very gently, "She was with a man." "I'm sorry. I don't know his name." I thanked her, left, sat in my car for half an hour with the engine running and my hands in fists. Then I went back in. Asked about security footage. The manager said they couldn't release anything without legal cause. I said I understood. But he said something else, quietly, almost like a whisper. She wasn't wearing a badge. No laptop, just a purse. That was all I needed. I didn't confront her that night, or the next. I went quiet. Something inside me had shut off. Like the part that wanted answers was exhausted. I already knew the truth. I just didn't want to hear her lie about it. I started sleeping in the guest room. She asked why. I said I wasn't feeling well. She didn't press. Or maybe she didn't want to hear it either. 2 days later, I packed some clothes, my laptop, and a folder with documents, passport, license, birth certificate. I left the ring she'd lost in her top drawer. Left the replacement on the nightstand. No note, no drama, just gone. She called 3 hours after I left. Then texted. Then called again. By evening, she was blowing up my phone. I turned it off. Checked into a small motel off the interstate. I stayed up watching reruns of shows we used to love. They didn't feel like ours anymore. The next morning, I drove to my cousin Eli's place in Colorado. He lived in a small town near the mountains, ran a garage, fixed up classic trucks and motorcycles. We hadn't talked much over the years. Life got in the way. But when I showed up at his door with a duffel bag and hollow eyes, he didn't ask questions. Just gave me a place to sleep and a pair of work gloves. The days blurred together. I worked with Eli in the mornings, sanded rust off old hoods, learned how to rebuild a carburetor. My hands were always dirty, my mind always racing. But the quiet helped. The work helped. Slowly, the numbness turned into clarity. A week in, I told Eli everything. He didn't say much, just listened. Then he said something that stuck with me. People like her, they're good at seeming innocent. That's how they get away with it. I nodded. I feel stupid, I admitted. Like I wanted to be blind. Doesn't make you stupid, he said. Just means you loved her more than she deserved. I didn't cry. Not then. Not later. I think my tears had expired. What came next wasn't sadness. It was something colder. Because that's when the smear campaign started. Emma made a blog. She titled it Healing from Emotional Control. She called herself a survivor. She said she'd spent years walking on eggshells. Said she'd finally found the strength to leave a toxic relationship. She described me, without using my name, as obsessive, jealous, manipulative. She said I didn't let her have male friends, that I monitored her phone, that I isolated her from her support system. It was like reading a horror story where the villain wore your face. Her friends reposted it, commented support, called her brave. One even messaged me and said, "You should be ashamed." I didn't respond. I watched as the woman who shattered me rewrote the story to paint herself as the one crawling from the wreckage. She didn't just break my heart. She buried the pieces under her version of the truth, and expected no one would dig them up. At first, I told myself I'd stay quiet. I didn't want to fight online. I didn't want to defend myself to people who already decided I was the villain. Silence felt like control, like the only power I had left. I remember staring at her blog one night, scrolling through her newest post titled, Breaking Free from Fear. In it, she described how she escaped a suffocating relationship. She called it psychological abuse. She said she'd been robbed of her sense of self. She painted herself as this fragile phoenix, rising from a decade of repression. None of it was true, but it didn't matter. People believed her. Why wouldn't they? She had a soft face and a sharp tongue. And I wasn't there to correct the record. Her followers multiplied. Friends we both knew started liking her posts. One even shared her story with the caption, "I always knew something was off. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I sat in Eli's garage, sanding the same motorcycle fender for 3 hours straight. The paint didn't need that much work. I just needed something for my hands to do while my head caught fire." Then the text started. Mutual friends, acquaintances, people I hadn't spoken to in months. "Hey man, can I ask you something? Did you really check her phone all the time? Were you controlling?" That's when I realized silence wasn't safety. It had become a we *p*n. Just not mine. She wasn't trying to heal. She was trying to erase me. So I made one post. Just one. No rant. No captions. No hashtags. I posted a *t. It was a message from her, sent 3 weeks before I left. It read, "Don't worry. I'll tell him soon. He still thinks I'm loyal. Poor guy." I posted one more thing. A photo. Time-stamped. Her. Standing barefoot on a balcony I didn't recognize. Wine glass in hand. Smiling. Hair up. Same outfit she wore on a day she told me she had food poisoning and stayed home. That was it. I didn't say her name. Didn't explain. Didn't even tag anyone. I just let the truth sit there. And it did what the truth always does. Spread. People connected the dots. Quietly at first. Then louder. Some messaged me. Apologies. Regret. One guy I barely knew sent me a voice memo that started with, "I'm sorry, man. I had no idea," and ended with silence and a deep breath. Emma didn't respond. Not directly. But 2 days later, her healing blog disappeared. So did her Instagram, her Twitter, all of it. Gone like it had never existed. And then I heard what happened. Her affair partner dumped her. Apparently, he found out she'd been texting someone else too. A bartender she used to work with. The third man. The second one didn't take it well. Told people she was emotionally chaotic. Moved out. Cut ties. Suddenly, she was no longer the phoenix. She was just noise. A friend from back home messaged me. Said Emma had moved out of her apartment. Said she was staying with her mom again, in a rental near the freeway. No job. No car. Just her silence, and the version of the story she couldn't sell anymore. I didn't celebrate. There was no victory in it. Just confirmation. She hadn't been sorry when I left. She was only sorry when the mirror cracked and she had to see what was behind it. But I was done watching her try to rewrite the past. Now it was my turn to move forward. I stayed with Eli through the fall. The air got colder. The garage got quieter. Every morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. and worked until my muscles ached. It helped. Even the small things, changing oil, patching tires, felt like building something after months of watching everything fall apart. Eli didn't talk much unless I asked him to. That made it easier. He let me stay in the upstairs room with the slanted ceiling and the broken blinds. I didn't care. I liked the drafts. I liked the way the trees outside creaked when the wind picked up. It made me feel less alone. Emma texted once more. Just one message. "I'm sorry." No explanation. No begging. Just those 2 words. I didn't respond. What was there to say? That word, sorry, meant nothing from someone who only used it when the spotlight turned off. It wasn't guilt. It was loneliness. I blocked the number. Some nights I thought about everything we'd had. Not in a nostalgic way, more like reviewing security footage after a robbery. Looking for the moment it all slipped out the door. I kept coming back to that game. The one at the office party. The video of her choosing another man while blindfolded. She didn't even hesitate. That was the second she stopped being my wife. The rest was just paperwork. Eli never asked when I planned to leave, and I never said. It was an unspoken agreement. He gave me space, and I didn't pretend I was okay. I stayed through winter. By January, the snow in the foothills had crusted into dirty gray piles. The roads stayed slick. Most mornings I'd breathe fog onto my hands and shove them into my jacket before heading into the garage. Eli had given me a rhythm. Monday through Saturday, 8 to 6. On Sundays, we fixed things for fun. Stuff that didn't need fixing. Old lawnmowers, a dented fire pit, even an ancient jukebox someone left behind. It was the first time in years I'd gone weeks without someone lying to me. That kind of silence was strange at first. Not empty, just honest. Emma stayed gone. I didn't check. I didn't care. Her chapter had closed, and whatever came after was hers to live through. I wasn't going to chase a ghost through the wreckage she left behind. I thought about going home, back to the house, the one we bought together, the one she filled with her plants, her frames, her voice. But I knew what would happen if I walked through that door. I'd smell her perfume in the walls, hear the echo of her laugh in the tile hallway, find a piece of her hair on the pillowcase she never washed properly. No, I needed a clean page. So I looked north. A small town outside Flagstaff. Quiet, a little rugged, mostly pine trees and people who didn't ask too many questions. The kind of place where you could disappear without being lost. I found a garage hiring part-time. A one-room apartment above a coffee shop. I packed what I had, still not much, and left Eli a thank you note and a bottle of the whiskey he used to hide behind the cereal boxes. I didn't say goodbye. Didn't feel like I needed to. He'd know. The new place was tiny, maybe 600 square feet, but it didn't feel small. Not in the way our old house had. The bed fit against one wall, a dresser against the other. The kitchen had 2 burners, a microwave, and a fridge that made a strange humming noise. It was perfect. I bought new sheets. White ones. I didn't want color. I didn't want memory. I bought 3 plates, 2 mugs, 1 pan. I didn't bring anything from the old life. Not the couch. Not the pictures. Not even the guitar Emma gave me our second Christmas together. I let it all go. Some nights I'd sit on the fire escape, drinking tea that tasted like warm paper, watching headlights carve through the trees. I wasn't bitter, just still. Sometimes I looked at old photos. Not to hurt myself, just to remind myself that once, I was someone who believed. There was one picture I kept on my phone for longer than I meant to. Emma in the kitchen, flour on her shirt, laughing with her mouth open wide. I remember taking that photo because she just told a dumb joke and asked, "Did you get it?" And I said no, but I took the photo anyway. That picture used to mean warmth. Now it looked like a scene from a movie I didn't remember watching. So I deleted it. I started hiking on weekends. There's something about being alone in the woods that makes everything make more sense. You walk for long enough and your brain stops trying to fix things it can't fix. It just breathes. I found a trail behind an old ranger station, worn down, barely marked. It led to a small overlook facing a valley full of pine and fog. I went every Sunday, sat on a flat rock and just let time pass. No phone, no watch, just air and weight and the sound of trees remembering what it's like to be untouched. One afternoon, an older man passed by with a dog. Big, floppy-eared, tongue hanging out like he'd never been tired a day in his life. The guy nodded at me, said, "That's your spot now. Nobody else comes up here." Then he kept walking. Stuck with me. I didn't need to own the land, but having a place that felt mine again without her in it meant something. Work was steady. Small garage, 3 of us on staff. The owner, Paul, liked blues music and didn't care if you took breaks to clear your head. He gave me space, said I was quiet but reliable. That was all I needed to be. I didn't tell anyone what happened, not because I was hiding it, but because it didn't matter anymore. Emma wasn't a story I needed to retell. She was just a chapter that ended in black ink and a blank line. I never thought I'd find peace in a town where the gas station had 1 pump and the diner closed at 7. But here, things made sense. If it snowed, you shoveled. If a belt snapped, you replaced it. No guessing. No mind games. Just problems and solutions. Tangible. Measurable. One night, I got a message from a mutual friend. Someone who used to come to our dinner parties. Someone who believed her at first. He said, "I saw what she wrote. I'm sorry for not asking your side. I just didn't want to believe it." I typed a response, then deleted it. He wasn't the one I needed anything from. He hadn't lied to my face for months. He hadn't held my hand and promised forever while erasing me from her future one text at a time. So I let it go. I let a lot of things go. People, pictures, places. I stopped wondering if she was still with the bartender, or if she started the blog back up under a new name. I stopped trying to understand what she wanted. That was her burden now, not mine. My job wasn't to carry her mistakes anymore. My job was to live. And slowly, that's what I started doing. I learned to cook badly, burned rice 3 times in 1 week, melted a plastic spoon in a frying pan because I didn't know it wasn't heat-proof, laughed at myself, alone in the kitchen, wearing a t-shirt with grease stains and music playing too loud. I slept like a rock for the first time in years. No more tossing. No more pretending to be asleep while listening for the door to open, wondering where she'd been, what lie I'd get, how guilty she'd pretend to feel. Now it was just me. And for the first time, that was enough. First, Nate tried to leave it all behind. But rumors have long legs, and lies travel faster than truth. Friends reached out hesitantly, some believing Emma's version. Whispers of control, jealousy, and possession.